Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Basarabeasca in Moldova, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. I didn't find any really solid resources that said how to pronounce this town and this region of Moldova. But I know I have Moldovan viewers, so let me know. I'll pin a comment down there if it's egregiously mispronounced, but do let me know. So as you can see by my little map here, this is a very tiny corner of a very tiny country. And like 99.9% of this area is just farmland. You can see this river flowing through and making the border right here. It's the Kogalnitz River. I have no idea how to pronounce that, so let me know that one in the comments as well. But what does this river make up the border with? What's this over here? This is Ukraine. This is the Ukraine border here, which we'll talk about in its history. That's very important today, as you can imagine. So since there's really nothing here to talk about in terms of geography, we're not going to go to the tablet tonight, which is a bummer. So those of you who are like, man, I missed the tablet, tomorrow, we are going to have lots of fun tablet time. We're going to go to Switzerland next. So don't you worry, don't you fret. The tablet will be back. Anytime I do a video without the tablet, I get comments saying, when is the tablet coming back? Tomorrow, okay? Don't you worry. Tomorrow. But let's talk about the interesting little history of this tiny corner of Moldova. So this region, of course, was part of the Kingdom of Moldavia between 1393 and 1538. But it really wouldn't become prominent until 1812. 1812, after, lots of conflict with Russia, this country at the time developed this area known as Basarabia. It's pretty much the entirety of Moldova today. Basarabia was an interesting little place. It was kind of, Eastern Europe, just little backwaters, not very important. I imagine this area was just mostly farmland until 1846, when the town here was established by a Jewish population. I didn't see any sources, but I imagine if you have a Jewish population moving into an area and creating a town, they're probably kicked out of somewhere, which I imagine this was Russia back then, they were probably booted out of Russia. They established their own community here, which was very prosperous well into the 20th century. It was majority Jewish for a long, long time. And it was mostly farming land until about the early 1900s, the early 20th century, when it started to become a little bit more industrialized, and they even got a train station that's still there today. Of course, all of that would change come World War II, but real quick, World War I happened first. In World War I, this area became part of Romania. I should say Basarabia became part of Romania. Just fact for you. In 1940, the onset of World War II, this area was invaded by the USSR. And why was that? Say it with me. If you've watched this channel enough, you know what I'm about to say about Eastern Europe. It was part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. I can't even say it anymore. I've said it so many times. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. That was a pact between the USSR and Nazi Germany before the war broke out, with the concept of hey, if a war broke out and if we fought, what lands would we conquer, and so they got a map and they drew a line. They were like, Nazi Germany can have this part, the USSR can have this part. And it just kind of stayed a little agreement until the war actually broke out. And then the USSR went and invaded all of the lands that they had claimed in that agreement, including Basarabia. And as you can imagine, the large Jewish population, of course, suffered during this time. I didn't see any exact numbers about this town, but I did read that in Basarabia, about 120,000 Jewish people lost their lives during this time, which is absolutely tragic. But it is like a small number compared to other atrocities toward Jewish people in Romania at the time, but that's not today's video. Like, it's sad, of course, but the Holocaust was a tragedy. Moving on. We all know this. We don't talk about topics like that on this channel too often because they're not relaxing, and YouTube does not like it. They tend to demonetize videos like that for being too graphic, even though I'm not being graphic, but it's YouTube. So, with that being said, we're going to move on. Actually, with that being said, the one site that I saw on this town on Google Earth that was interesting was the Jewish graveyard. Now, normally when you see Jewish graveyard, right, you think, oh, it's overgrown and run down and the tombstones are knocked down and all carved in Hebrew with stars of David on them, looking very haunting, which is sad because graveyards should be kept up no matter who's buried there, right? But there's that kind of vision you have when you think of like an old Jewish graveyard. But not so here. It's very well maintained. It's very modernized. The graves are pretty recent, from like the 1950s and 60s, at least the ones that I saw, and they looked very Soviet-y. So, while the Jewish population did indeed suffer in Basarabia, there was still quite a bit going on here after World War II, which is wonderful, of course. Just took me by surprise to see, Jewish graveyard. Oh, it must be so run down and overgrown. No, it's beautifully maintained, just as it should be. I forgot something. When this town was established, they called it Romanovka, after the Romanov royal family of Russia, right? So by the 1950s, that name was not ideal, right? In the USSR, you don't want to have any reminders of the Romanovs. The Soviets, the Bolsheviks in particular, massacred any Romanov they could get their hands on. So having a town called Romanovka, not ideal. At the time when they founded it, named it, they were trying to appeal to the Tsar and be like, look, we've made a town named after you. Give us money. But they really didn't. But the Romanovs are no more, or at least no longer in power. So how did it get this name? I actually don't know. I assume it's some form of Basarabia, right? But nearby, there was a semi-abandoned settlement called Heinrichsdorf. I bet you're saying that doesn't sound very Moldovan or Romanian or Ukrainian. That sounds pretty German, and you would be correct. It was a German settlement established in the late 1800s from German immigrants who came to the area to find better farmland and better lives for their families. And of course that changed also during World War II when the Soviets invaded. They needed to be out of there. Many just straight up fled, but the Nazi German government also set up programs to help the German immigrants in this area head back to Nazi Germany where they were safer. So the town, while it was still around, most of the population was gone. All of the Germans in the town had gone. So these towns merged to become Basarabeasca. Which again, I don't know why that name, but there it is. Of course, Basarabia is no more. It's Moldova today. especially after they gained independence from the USSR in 1991, except don't tell Transnistria that over here. You can see Tiraspol right there. They still believe that the Soviet Union exists, and they're very loyal to it. Not Russia, not loyal to Russia, loyal to the USSR. That does not exist anymore, but don't tell them. They're still in like 1985. Just let them be, okay? Anyway. And obviously, like I said, this little town is quite important today because of the conflict in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Many Ukrainians fled the border, and this town became a refugee center. Today, there are about 700 Ukrainians living there, which is a pretty big deal because there are only about 1,000 people living there before the invasion. So most of the resources I read about this town came from a charity organization that's there to help the Ukrainian refugees, which is wonderful, right? We want everyone to be safe. And hopefully very soon this conflict will end peacefully and they can go home to Ukraine. We hope. We hope. But obviously a lot needs to be done to set up so many people, almost half the population of this town, to keep them comfortable and safe, of course. So there's a lot of work being done there for that, and that's wonderful. We're glad that everyone is protected, but it would be even better if they were in their own homes in Ukraine, right? But that is where we are today. All lush, beautiful farmland, little cute town with a train station. And that's about it for the geography of that town. So, that's all I got for you. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry it's a short one, but some of you guys like the short ones. Yesterday's was kind of a short one. Tomorrow, though, will be quite a long one because, like I said, tomorrow we're going to Switzerland. We are going to see some neat things. We're going to see some beautiful Roman ruins. We're going to see the world's oldest art museum, little asterisk, that was open to the public. And we're going to see a neat border, a three-way border between Switzerland, Germany, and France, which looks quite unique. And we're going to all see that on the tablet, so be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. Don't forget to give this video a little thumbs up, especially if you learned something new today. Let me know what you learned down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on tomorrow's video and lots of exciting videos next week. Next week we're going to Russia, Italy, and Spain. You guys love the Spain videos. I mean, I love making them, but you guys love Spain videos. But anyway, I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good